Welcome, everyone, to our third career panel within the Meet EU activities. And as you can see here on the background here, this is our Meet EU European Union grant that we received. And as part of this, we have a wonderful career panel on the nitty-gritty of applying for a job in Europe lined up for you with wonderful experts and a great moderator. My name is Marcus Thiel. I'm a professor for European politics at Florida International University and also director of FIU's Jean Monnet Center of Excellence. We received together with the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill and University of Pittsburgh a two-year grant called Meet EU that has a whole host of various activities culturally, diplomatically, politically, as well as these kind of European career trainings. And so over the next year and a half, we will talk to a number of European diplomats, CEOs, business chamber representatives, career coaches, and so on, focusing on various career aspects in Europe. But today, we'll focus on the details of applying and interviewing for a position in European companies stateside or in Europe with the help of our moderator, SIPA's career specialist, Nelly Leon, and three great European experts. But before we begin, let me thank the European Commission, as well as the EU delegation in Washington, DC, who gracefully supplied material funding and support for our activities, as well as our collaborative partners, of course, at UNC Chapel Hill and the University of Pittsburgh, as well as the larger US-based Jean Monnet network for their good collaboration. I also would be remiss to thank our European American business chambers, which were very instrumental in getting our experts to come today, especially the Spanish American business chambers, the Italian American business chambers, and the German American Chamber of Commerce. And I want to thank them for their support. Importantly, I want to thank my right hand, Madame Christine Kalli, as well as our SIPA, our tech staff, and most importantly, our three wonderful panelists that are being introduced by our moderator in a second. And our moderator, I want to thank Nelly Leon. Before I hand it over to her, let me just say a few words about her. Nelly Leon is a career specialist serving for over 14 years at the School of International Public Affairs here at Florida International University. She delivers innovative career readiness programming for students and alums, and engages employers and other campus and community stakeholders in a number of areas. Thank you so much, Nelly, for moderating the session, and the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful welcome and introductions. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with all of you. And thank you to our participants that are here today as well. We'd like to begin first and foremost. First, I'd like to introduce our panelists. They're global panelists. And first, we have Annabel Edo, Managing Director of US. She's the Executive Search and Strategic Consultant for Ackermann International. We have also Renata Urban. She is Intercultural Coach for Language and Communication Skills Trainer with Urban Training and Services. And we have finally Stefano Vetralla, Managing Partner for Ames International USA. And what I'd like to do is first give the floor to Annabel Edo. I know in terms of she has a very well biography, recognition with many accomplishments. So I'd like to give the floor to her to tell us a little bit about you. And I know each of you will have also some presentations as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nelly. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's such a pleasure to be able to participate in this panel. Well, first of all, let us introduce ourselves. We're Ackermann International, headhunting firm specialized in executive management. Originally from Spain, we offer services on executive search and also business and HR consulting services. We are present in more than 4 different continents, 200 consultants in more than 36 offices around the world. So as being Spanish, we are capable to be able to empathize and to understand the cultural barriers when having to hire candidates for our clients in different cultures and in different geography stages as well. right? Let me introduce a little bit about the Spanish macro situation right now, about Spain. We have to keep in mind that it's a country that has been strongly hit by the pandemic. It is a country that is now recovering from a general closeout. Unemployment rate right now is 14%, and people under 25 years old are facing 33% of unemployment rate, which used to be 40% last year, one of the highest in the European Union. 25% of the active labor force have changed their job in the former year, and this is due to the mass layoffs and the closing of many companies. Nevertheless, news are not that bad. I don't want to give a bad sense, so we have also very favorable indicators. GDP is recovering. We are also getting international investment, which is helping to open new companies, new origination of jobs, and also the reactivation of damaged industries as tourism and leisure. 70% of our population has been already vaccinated, and this is also helping a lot to be able to open business and get back on track. When having to find a job in Spain, there are many different particularities that we have to keep in mind. Specifically, there are a lot of differences between the US and Spain that we have to be conscious about. External image is something that it is very important. I'm not talking about the looks, but about what you plot on your CV, what you plot on LinkedIn, what you plot on your social media. It is very important to be able to take care of those issues. When writing a CV, for example, we have to keep in mind that we need to disclose an elevator speech, something that actually tells about you, your strengths, what you're looking for, where you want to go, and what you want to reach. We also have to take in mind that it's not limited to one page. So people at employers are not going to be expecting only one page, but more. So don't be afraid to write as long as it is useful information and something that adds value to your profile. Do not only should, but must include a picture in your CV. And this is something that every employer are going to expect. It should be a professional picture, and please take care of your looks on a picture as well, because it tells a lot. Looks do not tell how much you're worth, but a picture, a worked picture with detailed emphasis and detailed focus will tell that you're someone that is organized, that pays attention to detail, and that you're someone that is going to be a very detailed professional. At the same time, please keep two different versions of your very same CV. It is important to have one in English and one in Spanish. Not everyone that is going to be a recipient of your CV do speak English. Thus, it is very important that every time you get asked about a CV, you actually have 2 copies to send, one in Spanish and one in English. We need to keep in mind that LinkedIn is the biggest tool for headhunters and recruiters, and as well potential employers. It is the tool that pretty much everyone uses to be able to search for a profile and to make sure that it has some accountability and it is somehow reliable. So one of the biggest mistakes that people do on LinkedIn is that they do not inform about the languages they speak. So it's very important for you to be able to mention that and to state it. People take it as a given that as long as they are Spanish, for example, it happens here in the US as well. As long as you're Spanish, people are going to understand that they do speak Spanish, but it's not always the case. And it also is helpful for you to know that headhunters, we use a specific tool to be able to search for candidates. And if we do filter by language, you might be filtered out if you do not inform about it. And that's something that it is very important to be mentioned. Please state a detail on each position, your responsibilities, what you were doing in every position. At the same time, it is important to mention the goals that you were capable to achieve at each position. Always complete the information. Sometimes we find people that has studied at FIU, but do not mention what programs. So it's important to mention what programs you've been involved in, if it was a bachelor's, if it was a master's, and also the thesis or the programs that you were involved in every program. And one of the most important things to mention on LinkedIn and to show you to the external world is the number of connections that you have. Please try to befriend with people that are worthwhile to your network and to your future career, and try to become as close as possible with a lot of potential employers, bosses, colleagues, etc. in your own very same industry. You don't need to be friends with 5,000 people. Thank God LinkedIn has one thing that it always tells plus 500. So as long as you reach a certain amount of people being connected to you, that's something that is going to be very positive for your profile. It also will tell that your profile is not scam, and at the same time that you take care of your network and your public image, which eventually, once being hired by a company, you become a public image of their brand, and that's something that employers take very much into attention. On the other side, when looking for opportunities, I said LinkedIn is the strongest tool. It's very helpful if you can actually post and get onto the postings on jobs. It actually is very easy. It is called easy apply, and that's something that it won't take you much, but do not stop there. You have to empathize with your counterpart, the employer or the recruiter that are posting this job offer. They probably get 500 CVs in a job offer. So it is most likely that they are not going to see your CV. It is important for you to be able to reach for that person, to see and try to guess who has posted the job and try to send them an email. At the same time, getting into the official website of the company, it's something very positive onto careers that you can do and that you can reach for any kind of posting. Not only that, you can also reach headhunters. Do not be afraid to reach them and ask them for help. They're going to be one of the best ambassadors you can have. Always try to be friends with headhunters. You can all be friends with me, but at the same time, you can try to find for other ways and other people. And when a headhunter contacts you, please always say yes. It is very helpful, even if the position does not interest you. It is an opportunity for you to be able to meet a new headhunter. It is an opportunity if they probably have something else that is more interesting for you than the opportunity they called you for, or it also is pretty positive for you to be thought of. They can probably remember you for other future opportunities they might have on their desk. And building a network is something very important that you have to keep in mind when in a foreign country or with a foreign culture. When finding a job for international companies, it is important that you assist and that you try to reach out for international organizations of your own nationality, for example. Chambers of commerce or any other organizations are very helpful for you to be able to reach and to ask for any kind of help on to being able to be connected to your most closer companies to your nationality, or companies that are actually looking for candidates like you. And that's the best advice that I can give you on networking. The key soft skills that are most likely to be searched for in Spain are critical thinking, which is what deviates you from a machine, problem solving, the capacity that you have to not only solve problems, but think on logically, and also emotional intelligence, which helps you empathizing with the counterpart that you're having a conversation with. It could be your employer, but it could also be a team member. It could be a client, a supplier, etc. And last, when attending an interview, please try to dress accordingly to the corporate culture of the company, not only the country, but the corporate culture of the company. It is very important to take care of that. The looks in Spain do matter a lot. Also get there 5 to 3 minutes earlier than the time, not earlier than 5, not later than the time. And you also always have to expect that you're going to be waiting for the person you're going to be meeting at least for 5 minutes, if not more. So do not get too desperate. It's normal, and that's something that you should expect. And yeah, this is a brief description of what would entail to look for a job in Spain. I'm more than glad to answer any questions later. And I'm gonna leave room for Nelly and for also my amazing colleagues, Renata and Stefano.
Oh, thank you, Annabelle. My goodness, I was going through the, thank you, Annabelle, thank you. I was going through the moderate questions and I said, wow, okay, she's hit on a lot of these questions that we're gonna definitely be following up on later. I did want to add in, participants, if you have any questions at all, please use the Q&A chat. If you're specifically referencing a question to a specific panelist here, please put the name of the panelist. If you have a specific question for them or for in general, you can leave it blank. You don't have to address it to a specific panelist, but we'd love to hear from you. We will have time for questions towards the end of the session. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Renata Urban that will be sharing with you a little bit about herself, her organization. Renata.
Thank you very much, Nelly. And I have everything in a presentation that I'm going to share with you, including my introduction. So we're going to switch to this presentation here. So about myself. So obviously today I am representing the country Germany. This is why the German flag is here on my introduction slide. I was born in Germany. I was raised in both Germany and the UK. I lived and worked in Italy. I am resident of the United States. This is my new home. I've been here for more than a decade, but I have worked with clients from around the world. I've traveled a lot for business and also for private purposes. So this is why I put a lot of different flags here to represent that. My background is in business and training and in linguistics. I have my own business and I work as a language trainer, intercultural and diversity coach, and a communication skills trainer and a speaker. And I hope to give you a little bit of an insight into intercultural communication in general, but also very specific tips and tricks about working in Germany, working with Germans, and how to write a German resume or a resume for applying for a job in Germany. Like I said, I have my own business, Urban Training and Services, named after myself. And my motto is that I help people communicate successfully with others in their own language, in a foreign language, and across cultures. I work with private individuals and businesses, and I work with businesses. I help them to build successful, diverse teams and interact effectively with diverse clientele worldwide. So I hope to share a little bit of that experience with you today. So we're going to talk about intercultural communication in general, some tips and tricks about job applications in German culture, and then the Q&A session at the end where you can ask any of us questions about our presentations. I want to start with something very general about intercultural communication. Now, what does it mean? When you communicate, you have a sender and a receiver of a message. It goes through a process of encoding, decoding, goes through channels, filters, and so on. And the entire process is repeated all over again. Now, if you think communicating with others, no matter where they live, your neighbors, your colleagues, your peers, foreigners from halfway around the globe, you may already feel that communication is like a risky walk on tightrope, but throw in the element of culture and it's a very volatile situation. This is what you will encounter when you work abroad, when you apply for a job in a different country in the European Union, for example. So this is why I want to introduce to you the layers of culture to make you think about what you will encounter. A lot of people understand national culture or maybe regional culture as the only layers of culture. But please be aware that there are different layers like professional educational culture, gender, ethnic, class culture, religious, philosophical culture, generational and corporate culture, and on the very top, personal culture, meaning personality. So whoever you communicate with in your own country, abroad, across different professions, genders, generations, the the visual behavior and communication style is always a combination of culture, personality, and circumstances. This is going to help you wherever you go, no matter what the country is. And I want to point out to you that it's important to know how culture is defined. Now, culture is defined as something that we have subconsciously acquired, that we're used to, that we haven't really learned in school, but we know how to navigate around this culture. And it doesn't matter how much we agree or disagree with it, but we recognize those patterns, norms, and behaviors. And I call this the 3 R's. Everything we learn to navigate is usually recognized, reinforced, and rewarded in that culture or by that group, that cultural layer. And non-compliance is often frowned upon or punished. So just be aware of that. If you see those patterns, norms, and behaviors, if you can identify in any layer of culture, if you get to know what is recognized, reinforced, and rewarded, then you're on a good path to be able to find your way around to navigate that culture. Now, I was asked to talk about building intercultural competence in general, in addition to something very specific about Germany. This is important for any place you go. Research and surveys have shown over and over again that these 3 elements are the most important ones: attitude, curiosity, and openness, skills and knowledge, and adaptability. So if you bring a lot of curiosity instead of fear of difference, even maybe appreciation of difference, if you have the willingness to listen, watch, and learn, if you are someone with a lot of patience, empathy, and tolerance, and maybe even a sense of adventure, that is the best basis, the best foundation to develop intercultural competence. There are a lot of skills and knowledge that you can acquire. I actually call this the do's and don'ts, or the protocol. So, for example, Germany, and I'll show you some things about Germany. You shouldn't do this and you should do that. This is protocol for a very particular country. And this is something you can learn. But above and beyond that, your adaptability will also help you, especially emotional intelligence, like Annabel mentioned before, flexibility. This is extremely important, that you don't just look at what you see, the what, but you look beyond the what. You look at the why. Why are people behaving that way? Why are people saying this or doing that? This is going to help you a lot to make your experience abroad a very beneficial and rewarding one. Now, I mentioned already that you have to really distinguish between protocol and intercultural competence. So protocol is the do's and don'ts, this type of behavior that is recognized, reinforced, and rewarded. And you really have to compare it with what I just mentioned, the intercultural competence of building awareness, the why beyond the what, and so on. So I really find intercultural competence is the basis, and everybody can work on that and have a good foundation for any country you're going to. But protocol specifically, I want to mention a few things important for Germany. Now, I could be talking about all of those intercultural dimensions, and I unfortunately don't have time for that. I have one particular intercultural dimension that I can talk about later if the question comes up in the Q&A section, but for now I'm just going to go at some specific cultural differences as pertain to Germany. So you really need to be aware of the formality. You might be used to a certain level of informality here in the US, and I believe the cartoon says it all. So get used to a formal level of communication. It's not a rejection on the side of the German interviewer or colleague. It's just the way it is done. Be aware that there's a higher level of formality of language. Also, the kind of friendly, superficially friendly way of being nice around everyone that you might be used to, like, hey, we should have lunch sometime. Be aware that Germans would take that very literally, and if you offer things like that, you should follow through. You shouldn't just say it to be polite. You should mean it or not say it. And this is the problem. Often I joke about it with honesty and diplomacy between the US and Germany, that you could say Germans are too honest to be diplomatic, and maybe US Americans are often too diplomatic to be honest. That's how both countries could view each other, and you will feel thrown amidst those differences. Also, the very famous keep it short and simple, the KISS approach, might not work very well in Germany, where a detailed background approach is much more appreciated. If you present yourself, if you sell yourself in an interview, you may want to make big claims, what you have accomplished and how fantastic things were that the project you were working on. Stay away from that in Germany. You should absolutely, under no circumstances, ever make unsubstantiated claims. Germans like facts if you can prove it, and not really that level of self-promotion you might be used to here in the US. You might always have this element of time is money versus haste makes waste, so different mindsets you might encounter, and this shows a lot as you're working there in project management, making plans or implementation. There's also a higher level of autonomy in Germany, I feel, and the decision making is very different. There's a higher level of consensus. And then in terms of presentation, the principle first style, where you give a lot of background information, is much more popular than the application first style, where you impress first and then you explain. It's actually the other way around. And also one more thing to think about is definitely small talk and humor. So just a few things to think about, and we can talk about it in more detail in the Q&A session if you'd like to. The rest of the time I have, a few more minutes, is about the German resume. So here are some things to consider. If you want to apply with an international company, ask yourself, does my resume or my application in general have to be in German or in English? It could very well be that you can do it in a US format, it's an international company, and they're specifically looking someone with the English language skills because it's an international business. But when we're talking about a very local or more traditional company, it will have to be in German and it will have to follow that traditional German format. Also, the design, the color, and all those little details, they may very well depend on the industry, the type of job, or other circumstances. In any case, please make sure that you tailor your resume to the job. Please, at no circumstances ever use a one-fits-all cookie-cutter resume. Nobody ever likes that anywhere. Now, if you write one in German, the traditional German resume is called Lebenslauf. You should start with something called zur Person. This is your personal information. There are things that you would expect, like your name, your postal address, phone number. Of course, LinkedIn handle, like Annabel already talked about, it's very important that you polish your profile on LinkedIn. You even want to get a Xing LinkedIn. Xing is the German equivalent to LinkedIn. If you have a website, and you can use all these kind of things, but I think what really throws people about German resumes is that your date and place of birth are expected in that first section of your resume, as well as your marital status if you have kids, and definitely a professional photo. Whatever job appropriate means, it really depends on the industry and what job you're applying for. But without a date and place of birth and without a professional photo, your resume will not be considered. Then you should continue to mention what is called angestrebte Position. So you should mention exactly what you're applying for, any particularities that have to do with it being part-time or an internship. And then you can move on to either 3 or 4, or swap the position of those two. So 3 is education, 4 is work experience, depending on what you have more of. If you're fresh out of college, maybe education should come first. If you have more job experience, then definitely you can start with 4. So 3 and 4 are interchangeable. And as always, it should be relevant to what you need for that particular job. So if you had a student job at a cafe, at a restaurant, and that doesn't really help you with the job you're applying for, you may not even want to mention it on your resume. However, there are many other things that are relevant. So focus on the evidence you have, focus on the tasks that you did and not on the achievements. I think that's a major difference between a German and American resume. Focus on tasks, not achievements. And I'm coming to the last couple of parts here where you should mention everything that is relevant to your professional training or career. If you have any language or intercultural skills, if you had any experience living, working, studying abroad, you participated in any exchange programs, if you have leadership, entrepreneurial skills, you should definitely mention these type of things. Also computer technology skills, everything that is relevant from your point of view. And there's something called ehrenamtliche Tätigkeiten, which is like volunteering, community work that can also be mentioned. And don't be shy to actually mention hobbies and interests in a German resume that can be found quite frequently. And then do end with a date and signature. Germans like dating and signing their resumes. That makes it unique. It's like one resume for each application. It doesn't give off that idea of a cookie cutter resume. So that's my brief overview. And if you have any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renata. Also, I am super impressed with the presentations. Many of the questions I was going to ask are being answered. I actually have some good follow-up questions, and there's some great questions coming in the chat, in the Q&A as well. And Stefano Vetralla, we're super excited to hear from you. You have the virtual floor.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here because it's an opportunity for myself, first of all, to think about what I learned in my journey and to share with some friends. Speaking about myself, I will like the really most important thing about my background is that I had the privilege to love what I am doing. And this is a strong recommendation to the young generation to follow what they really like. I really enjoyed more than 30 years and working globally at the international level. I've been living here in the States for 8 years. I work both as a consultant as for American corporations. And my current focus is supporting Italian and European companies that want to establish or to grow their business here in the United States. So I'm a managing partner for Ackermann International USA. I'm based in Miami. We basically do middle management and top management search. We do talent management project, and I'm also a professional certified executive coach. I don't know if you want to switch on the presentation. All right, thank you, my friend. You will help me when I say next. You turn the pages. Thank you very much. So next, what I would like to do, we already talked about the background, but I would like to do is to briefly, of course, mention my view about resume, my suggestion about resume and a successful interview. But also, I would like to share my perspective on some cultural differences. I think my experience was very interesting from this angle because I'm an European, but I worked abroad, and in particular in the US, but also in Asia Pacific. So next slide, please. What I was thinking is to share with you what I learned in my journey. So what does it mean to work for an European company? What does it mean to work for an European company in Europe or in the United States? The more you are global, the more you realize that the world is still local. So it's important to acknowledge that. This is maybe something that sounds trivial or banal, but it's not. There are still boundaries. The most intriguing and potentially, let's say, dangerous boundaries are those that are invisible. So we can document ourselves, we can study, we can attend seminars and events, a webinar, but there will always be something that we will learn by doing. And so what I suggest is to be really ready to embrace what is unexpected. The real challenge comes from unexpected things, as the current pandemic is witnessing to us. Next slide, please. I do suggest we continue to invest in cultural intelligence. Honestly, I believe my emotional intelligence is pretty high, but I never trusted so much my emotional intelligence in dealing with different culture. To be connected with and understand individual emotions is not necessarily being connected and understanding cultures. Of course, you have the extremes. I work with Japan as well, culture on China. Europe is in between, I guess, to make it very simple, to oversimplify, between the United States and Asia Pacific, but still there are some cultural differences we need to be aware of. Always, and I say always, focus on what is the reason why you are doing something. Ask to your employer, to your colleagues, if you go to Europe or if you work with European company, what is the rationale? What is the reason? What is the motive we are doing this? We really like to start from the why before the how. And always, when you want to do something, make sure that you offer, that you share what is your motive, what is the reason you are doing something. This will help you, will help us to detect the invisible boundaries and to make it explicit. So next slide, please. A little bit more specific on Italy. I would like to share what I learned by observing some Americans working in Italy, in particular, also in Europe, but in Italy. And probably is also based on my years of experience here in the States. It's just experience and just observation. So there is nothing else than that, but maybe you will find something interesting for you. Language, it's a barrier. As you can see, my English is not your English. It's a business international English. And sometimes when I spoke with my colleagues in America, they would say, we speak two English. We speak Stefano's English and we speak also English. But we non-native speakers perfectly understand each other. So you have a huge advantage. You are a native English speaker. So by moving into Europe or working with Europe, just make sure that you have a huge advantage. Don't take too much advantage by that, by showing respect and appreciation that Europeans, with the exception of UK, they are communicating with you in their second language, and make sure you effectively communicate with non-native speakers. That means, I know you guys use a lot of get in, get out, get off, but just make it simple, speak very slowly, and make sure that people are following you. In Italy, but I think it's generally in Europe, we prefer to understand what is the thought process. So what is the logic behind any decision on any application? When I first came to US, the first recommendation I would say, forget you are Italian. When you communicate, you talk too much, you use too many words, you just stay focused, because here in the States, less is more. Well, this is not true in Italy. When the less is more is not applicable in Italy, because we like to talk, we like to communicate. Our communication is much more indirect than direct. And we grow in this way. We are being educated in this way, that the more you are instructed, educated, and professional, the more you talk. So it's don't be surprised about that. As everything is personal, yes, it's very difficult to separate business from what is personal, from relationship, from interactions, from social. So always make sure you learn from the air, you understand, and you are connected with the social part. We tend to prefer to celebrate a group, a community. Team is probably not the right word. Success, other than individual success. The idea of merit is getting more and more accepted, of individual merit in Europe and in Italy, but still we belong to groups and communities. What I noticed is that we are very focused on the past. So our first question is what I did yesterday, what I have done is not what I'm going to do. So what I really like from the American culture is this constant projection to the future. So don't be surprised if in some cases our approach is a little bit slow, conservative, or prudent. We don't like making mistakes. We are afraid of making mistakes. We don't want to lose our reputation. We don't want to lose our face. Living in the US taught me a lot about mistake as an opportunity, but I still see a difference into that area. And when you manage business in Europe, I can tell you the social, the politics, and the business are very, very connected. I remember one restructuring that we did in Europe, and in particular in Italy, where American managers were very, very surprised because of the implications at political level, at social level of some restructuring that we had to do. So we had to discuss the restructuring with mayors, with regional administration and government, with central state government. So don't be surprised about that. These are my list of observation. Next slide, please. There are more, but I didn't want to bother you. And on the resume, I honestly believe that this is a pretty standardized thing. Almost all over the world, the resume is a result of the globalization. So I would just mention three things. People don't read, so HR doesn't read, so just make sure that it's short and focus on data, tangible information, concrete facts as much as possible. Be accurate. It's a formal document, so no typos, and make sure that by corresponding to Italian organization or European organization, your written communication in English is simple. So no need for using big, complex, complicated words. Next slide, please. On the job interview, again, also here, I believe is a pretty standard process. By approaching Italian organization or European organization, I would like to suggest just make sure they appreciate your culture too. So it's not just you focusing and being open on the others, but they have to prove and to show they also are open to your, by the way, amazing background. Be connected as much as possible. In the end, an interview is a meeting, is an encounter between two people. So that's very, very important in Italy. In particular, it's not just business, it's sharing connection, curiosity, interest too, and tell a story and ask a question, possibly powerful question, interesting question that makes your interviewer remembering you as an important or a significant moment in time. An interviewer interviews dozens, maybe hundreds of people in a year. It's just a routine. Our challenge when we meet them is to transform a routine in an event. Next slide, please. So what if you go tomorrow to Italy or to Europe? You go to work over there. I would suggest, and these are, by the way, some characteristics that I require when I find a candidate. When I hire a person, make sure you choose the leader. Never choose first, never put first the job of the company or the company. Always put first the leader. Because in my experience, every leader is generated to some extent by other leaders. In some cases, a leader is also a good coach, like in my case, but I'm an exception. So in some other cases not. So I'm joking, of course, but it's find a coach, a trusted person, a thinking partner, someone that can help you to navigate through the complexity of these cultural differences, and be American as much as possible. I love your culture. I love your continuous willing to learn. For you, learning is really an ongoing. It's never ending. It's never too late. There are a lot of sentences that I learned that I keep repeating to myself and to my kids. The sky is the limit. You are very transformative, innovative compared to Europe and compared to Italy. This is the asset. This is the asset that you can really bring. So learning other culture doesn't mean to give up with your unique beauty. And this is something I really love. And that's why I decided to remain in the United States. My final suggestion is burn your ships. I mean, once you moved, stop looking back of how it was, just stay focused on here and now. And I hope you find in the next slide, thank you, just a thank you slide. I hope you find something interesting for your journey. It's really an amazing adventure, learning other cultures, and it will keep you curious for the rest of your times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefano. Again, I'm so very much impressed with what you've shared with us today. And I have a few questions because there's also questions that the participants are asking. And we want to make sure that we answer the students' questions. First and foremost, I, as you know, work at FIU. I am a career coach to students here. And I'm seeing definitely a stark difference in terms of the CV writing, how it's written compared to the United States format of writing. So I'm glad I'm giving them good advice about if you're going to work in Europe, Latin America, Caribbean, Africa, Asia, the documents are going to look different. So I'm so glad to hear I'm giving them the right advice. With that said, I want to follow up on some of on that question on the CV. Annabel, Stefano, Renata, you've all alluded to it. Here in the US, it's very straightforward, you know, black and white, business, there's no pictures, no birth year, no personal information, no marital status, sexual orientation, etc. So just to be clear, for our participants, if they would like to look for jobs in Europe, and Annabel, feel free to go first, Renata and Stefano, is then do you accept only CVs? Do you accept resumes? And in terms of it for your specific countries, right, in Italy, Germany, Spain, do you have to have a picture, marital status, birth year? If you can just clarify on that so that our students are aware of the CV format, or if they could submit a resume.
We accept CVs and resumes as long as they have a picture. It is allowed to be able to mention if you want your nationality and date of birth. It's not required, but it's somehow helpful sometimes, depending on the culture of the company. It doesn't stop at any specific page, so you can go as long as you want, as long as it's relevant information.
Renata?
All right, as far as Germany is concerned, yes, you have to put all of this information that you mentioned, Nelly, starting with your postal address, with your date and place of birth, but also things like marital status. Like I said, you even have to date and sign the resume. You can put your hobbies and interests. They want to know everything about you. As far as the language or the style is concerned, it very much depends on the company and the industry. There could be a very technology-oriented international company that is specifically looking for someone from the US for an internship. They may very well accept a US-style resume in English because their company language might be English. But you would still have to show that you have at least made an effort to study a bit of German so you can survive once you leave the company in the afternoon or the evening and get around. But company language might be English in a lot of cases. I used to work for Adidas in Germany, the sporting goods manufacturer, and it's like day and night. You're inside the company, you're in an English-speaking environment. You leave the company, you're in a rural area and nobody speaks English. So you have to be prepared for that difference in language. But if you're looking at a position with a smaller company, something that is more traditional German style, you better speak some German, you better ask somebody to translate it for you into German, and it should meet those criteria of a typical German so-called Lebenslauf, which is the name for the CV there.
Thank you.
Well, on the resume in Italy, honestly, I think the American resume or CV is the standard. So I don't see a big difference. It's getting more and more rigid and restricted, the type of information that you can ask, because it's privacy, and in some cases is a law that doesn't allow you to ask if you have kids or your marital status. In some others is the policy of the company that it's following the direction of the biggest multinationals all over the world. As far as the language, well, I guess, of course, you can apply for a small Italian company near Venezia on a small manufacturing company with 15 people, but I guess you would like to apply to a company where your skills and your international experience is more relevant. So I guess a way to test them is to send them a resume in English, because if they don't respond to you in English, probably it's not your place. And more Italian companies are facing this internationalization. So they really appreciate that.
Thank you. With that said, the CV comes the interview, which many of you mentioned. And when we coach students here in the US with the interview process, I'd be curious to know, in your countries, how does that look different in terms of the interviews? Here, we coach our students to use the STAR method, right, for the behavioral questions. There's certain, you dress in your suit. There's certain, right, the etiquette of interviewing. Stefano alluded to, yes, ask a lot of questions, but are there some differences in terms of an interview, what it looks like here in the US compared to what it looks like there in Europe?
Yeah, for Spain, as I said before, being punctual, but having to wait for your interviewer is something that you have to keep in mind. It's going to happen. It is important to dress accordingly, not too formal, because then it might be seen as a little bit pretentious, but according to the corporate culture of the company. So it's very important to do a little bit of research before to be able to understand what's the dress code and how to access the interview. It also is very important not to oversell yourself too much. Once again, employers and recruiters in Spain do expect to find humble profiles as of being a very important trait for candidates. Thus, people that do tend to sell themselves too much on an interview might seem either desperate or pretentious at the same time. So those are some traits that we do not want to show on an interview, and not to a recruiter, not to an employer. And I think it's very important that you prepare your story by heart, that you structure everything that you want to tell about yourself. in order to have like a concrete, unordered storyline, and at the same time that you are capable to be questioned at any time, and that you're capable to replicate that story to any member of the company that you're going to have an interview with, so that you do not fall onto inconsistency, and at the same time that it seems as natural as possible, while at the same time you reinforce your strengths in a very natural way and not in an overselling way.
As far as Germany is concerned, I see a lot of parallels here to Spain, especially the not overselling is absolutely identical. So the boasting, or let's call it self-promotion, if you want to look at it in a more positive way, is not very welcome. So you should know what your strengths are and you can mention them. They definitely want to hear what you're good at, what you specialize in, but then don't oversell it. Absolutely, I would totally agree with that for the German market as well. Also, it depends on the industry or the company you work for. I would do a lot of research, and I think this applies to any company, any job, anywhere on this planet, that you do some research. What is the company culture? I'd like to compare two companies I worked for in Germany. One I already mentioned, Adidas, a sporting goods manufacturer, and then a manufacturing company of industrial products, very regional. So I would have a totally different interview experience with those two businesses. So you really have to see what their culture is. For example, the manufacturing business of industrial products, very regional, you would probably wear a suit, look very traditional, be very humble, keep it very formal. You would probably meet some high-ranking managers and be very formal in language with them if you speak German. Whereas Adidas, for example, you better wear Adidas sneakers when you go there. You better say that you love sports. You better say that you are an athlete. This is so much more important than other things maybe on your resume. So you should really know the company you're applying for, what their company culture is. So always see the country's culture, but also the company culture. Remember the different layers of culture. So corporate culture is something I would never underestimate.
Well, my experience on job interview, it's here in US is basically going through what is already written in the resume. So I did this, I did that. No, going through facts. What we do like to hear in Italy is a little bit more color and your experience. What did you feel? Your sentiment. So we are more interested about the stories, not just a report. And I remember the first time when I came here and I had to start the conversation. So you have an open question. So tell me your story. And I remember the first time I had to correct myself because some candidates, American candidates, would say, "My story? What do you mean? My story is my story, is my life." No, I'm saying just tell me who are you? So here I had to adjust and calibrate better. But if you go to Italy, that's the first question. Tell me your story, tell me who you are. And I don't want to be invasive with your privacy, but tell me as much you can say about you. Because the selection is not on what you have done, but is on who you are. So it's more interesting to talent than competences, the most part.
Definitely, right? Stark differences in terms of interviewing styles from here in the US to Europe. And I'm going to steal that one, Stefano, from you. When we coach students to say, "Tell me about yourself," we tell them, tell us about you. Tell us the story, right? So very, very good. Thank you. I am going to pivot to the Q&A because we have students that have questions, and keeping in mind with the time as well. But I did want to share with the participants that we have a resource called Going Global. This is for the students and alumni here for FIU. Now, the other university students that are here from the other universities, if you have Going Global, you may want to check with your career centers. And Going Global is a resource Here at FIU, students can access it through Handshake in the Career Center resources section. I'll have one of my colleagues drop it in the chat. You can find actual country guides. So if you're interested in working in France and Spain and Italy and Germany and Australia, Asia, in Latin America, students can actually find that country career guide with jobs and internships and resources on the documents needed to prepare for how to work there. Do you need a CV, a cover letter? What are the work permits? There's even a section on living like a local. So I think it was Annabel or Stefano referred to, and Renata, about, the culturally, how do you say hello? What do you do when you first meet someone? So I just wanted to put that out there. Going global, it'll be posted in the chat as a resource as well to help you supplement your career readiness if you would like to work abroad, especially as well in Europe. With that said, we have some really good questions that have come into the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and start addressing them. We have one of the first questions. It says, if a person has never been to the country they're applying to, what are some tips you have to prepare oneself for the professional environment? And I know some of you alluded to that, but if there's someone that would like to add on and supplement that.
Well, then I'll give it a go. I mentioned in my presentation the difference between protocol and intercultural competence, and I think this is exactly what this question references, that the database you mentioned, Nelly, that is protocol to me, the do's and don'ts, the recommendations, look up some information, some basic things you should know. That is one side, the skills and the knowledge. But then on top of that, the true intercultural competence that someone can acquire over time. And I think this is extremely important, that you look at also your attitude, your curiosity, openness, adaptability, all those things I mentioned in my presentation, to be prepared for the unexpected. Things will happen to you that you did not see coming. And then it's a question of attitude and curiosity and openness, how you react to it. Are you willing to look for the why beyond the what? Are you willing to listen, watch, and learn? Are you willing to ask people, can you explain that to me? See, back home we do it like this, or we would never say that. Why is that? So if you have that ability to do that, I would say chances are that you do pretty well, even in a country you've never been to.
I would say in Italy it's extremely important to be social, to be open to social life. It means it's not a social on the iPhone social. So we like to go out for lunch, for example. I found something here very different, where people tend to eat at the desk, while we use the break lunch to go out for a lunch together, join them. We sometimes take breaks during the day for a coffee. There is nothing else but coffee and chatting a little bit. There is nothing else. There is no second hidden agenda. It's just the pleasure of spending some time together. I think this is extremely important if you have an experience, a working experience in it.
Just to piggyback on that real quick, because I think that's very important about Germans, is that Germans tend to be very serious at work. And then all of a sudden, during break time, after work, they get very jolly, friendly, social. And then they go back to work, and all of a sudden they're very serious and almost uncommunicative again. This is something you should be aware of when going to Germany, that when you work, you work. And after work, you can have fun, that this is often separated and not mixed. So don't get too surprised when you encounter that.
Well, Yeah, in Spain, everyone's very close and friendly. The best advice that I can offer you is just do not be afraid to target some people that you might be looking at and that might be a role model for you, to be able to access them and to send them a message and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes for a coffee? They're going to be open to do so. It's very similar to what Stefano was saying before, even grabbing lunch or doing something together, so to get to know each other. And it is important that when you access people that could be even potential employers, do not ask them directly for a job. It might sound too harsh. And specifically in the Spanish culture, just ask them for guidance. It's way nicer, and at the same time, I'll help you gain an acquaintance. And they will help you even if they don't have a job opportunity at your company for you. They might refer you to someone else that may be a potential employer.
Thank you. I have another question. This question is, first, good morning. Thank you for hosting this great panel. My name is Nelly Leon, a prospective graduate student in global affairs at FIU. My question is open to all three panelists. If you don't have much previous experience working with international companies, what is the best way to stand out when first applying for jobs?
Well, I take that. I don't know if there is a specific order or if you can jump on your question. Okay. So what I've learned by living here is that who you are is your strength. So you don't have international experience, use it as your strength. If the fact that you don't have international experience is not a weakness. It's a weakness if you consider it a weakness. But how to transform that as an opportunity, that's the real challenge. And a lot of companies are interested to meet with, let's say, junior or neophyte or people with no international experience because they want to support their growth and contribute to their growth. When you already have an international experience, you have an opinion. So not all the companies are interested to senior with already experienced international experience because they want to manage expectations. So always try to leverage your current assets. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, maybe what I'd like to add to this is if you're interested in applying for a job abroad, there must be something that has originally triggered your interest in that. Maybe you're studying a foreign language. Maybe you're a member of an international club. So there might be a lot of activities in your life already that you don't consider international experience, but it's international activity. There must be a reason for your interest, and you can list all of that as something that has helped you to grow that interest, and this is why you finally want to take that important step and apply for a job abroad. But anything you can think of would be highly valuable on a resume or during an interview, saying that this is what you've done.
Yeah, in fact, talking about the strengths that you have and what you can bring to the table is something very positive. But at the same time, just the sole fact of you being interested in working abroad and applying for the job abroad tells a lot about you. Even if not having any experience, it tells that you're willing to face any cultural barriers, challenges that you're going to have to face in your professional and personal life as well. And that you are also bringing best practices from another territory, which puts you into a position to add value to any kind of company, even if not having any experience.
Thank you. Yes, and it's free flowing. At this point is whoever would, whichever the panelists would like to jump in, you're all good. You're great. There's so much great feedback. I'm just so impressed. Okay, the next question that we have is, in Spanish businesses, are there opportunities for professional development, such as mentor-mentee programs, internal learning courses, different colleague resources, groups, etc.? Yes.
Yeah, those programs, officially corporate programs, are not as frequent as they are here in the US. It is also, it is related to being not that formal and more informal. So the best advice in order to be able to be mentored or to be helped at a company is to build a personal relationship with any kind of profile where you can ask directly for mentorship and guidance, and you can actually be guided, because a lot of people are very helpful and very close to teaching and developing new generations of professionals. And this is one of the biggest traits that we're looking for candidates in Spain. People that, as I said before, have critical thinking and are guided and determined to problem solving and being able to find the logic, right? We sometimes look for candidates and we test them on technical qualities, which we know they are going to underperform before we do. But for us, it's important to understand how they try to find a solution in order to be able to face a problem. So something that simple as getting into Google and trying to find a solution for something, to like trying to build a network that can help you with something. And the same thing can happen within a company. You can be mentored and you can be guided, because the profiles that they're going to like the most are the ones with a higher potential and the eagerness to learn and to develop their profile within a corporate structure.
Thank you. And we have another question. So as I had mentioned, going global. So one of the features that going global does is that, for example, our students that are non-US citizens and want to work here in the US. So let's say we have a student from Jamaica or from Austria and they want to work here in the US. What the website Going Global, the resource does is it actually generates companies that will sponsor these non-US citizens to apply for companies in the US. So this question says, okay, does Going Global have a database that lists companies abroad that hire US citizens? So I know Going Global provides a job search for jobs and internship opportunities, but I don't believe the system can generate a report of companies in Europe that will sponsor US citizens in the country. So the question they're also asking is, are the panelists able to share specific websites that list companies that sponsor visas for non-EU nationals? So are any of you aware of a resource or a service or a company or a website for US citizens that want to work in Europe but are not, non-EU citizens? Well, then that's for my homework. I'll make a list to add it to talk to our leadership and the career office. But yes, please, Annabel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any specific website for European Union, but I can tell from experience as well, and having worked with a lot of commerce chambers, that those institutions are very helpful in order to understand the companies that are abroad or come from abroad that are willing to sponsor any candidates. They do have a lot of information, and they are a really good source of information for any kind of candidate.
Well, I suggest, unfortunately, I'm not aware of any additional source, but what I was thinking, and that it's a lot of American companies are hiring people with international jobs, so asking them to move and to relocate to Europe, and that's I believe the most practical, one of the best practical ways to move to Europe. Find an American company with a presence in Europe, and I work for American companies where they used to send several Americans to Europe just to build this confidence with different cultures. So this is another opportunity.
Well, I want to just say we have about 2 minutes left, and what we might have happen is that the webinar will close. So I want to make sure I start the closing just in case we are cut off. I do want to say such a genuine appreciation to all of you, the panelists, for being here and sharing your insight, sharing your stories, and really being raw and honest and unfiltered in terms of your career readiness and preparation for the students, and really giving back to the community for all the students and alumni and community present here today. I'd also like to thank the Miami, Florida Jean Monnet Center of Excellence, UNC Chapel Hill, University of Pittsburgh, and Florida International University, our very own FIU, for being able to host this session. And please, the survey, we count on your feedback. So students, alumni, participants that are here, please, if you can go, it takes less than really a minute to complete the survey. You can do it live while we're here, so that we can get your feedback to be able to better improve and better the next panels that will be happening in the future. With this said, I think I might have we have about maybe a minute to do closing. So final thoughts from the panelists. If you have a final thought, you can leave the participants with.
Well, don't be afraid. Ask for help, ask for support. I think this is my biggest recommendation. Keep an open mind, curiosity, and ask for help. And then you should not have anything to worry about.
I agree with Renata. She's totally certain. And yeah, feel free to reach out, any of us as well. We're here to help. We hope that our contribution also has helped a little bit on providing any guidance for any student and candidate. And we wish you a lot of luck.
Well, I would definitely suggest to go global, because it's really an amazing experience, and every day is an opportunity to learn. Every day is a completely different from the previous one, and you never stop learning. And this is for certain type of people, with avid learner and passionate heart. This is really an interesting field. So I do suggest it. And thank you again for having us today.
And I think we might still be on live. So I'm going to be able to sneak in, I think, another question that I see in the Q&A just in case, because we'd love to just make sure and see if we can get the last question in from the student, if it's okay with all of you. We had just one more question. Is there a job offer? Is it common to perform a salary negotiation in your countries?
Definitely, and I encourage you to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always try. I just feel for Germany, it needs to be reasonable and well researched. If you can prove that this is the average number, or you know of evidence that this is what you could ask for in your situation, then ask for it. Reasonable and well researched. I think these are the key words for Germany.
Well, it depends. It depends. Let's say that in Italy it's better to make sure that you receive what is fair. I personally don't like negotiations, and I think what is fair and equitable should be recognized, but of course be ready if it's necessary.
Well, thank you so much. Again, I always try to get in the last question if we could. And thank you again for being here today, for taking time out of your lunches, your meetings, and we appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.